5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Who that? Who that? Who that? Who that? Gossip news, gossip news, gossip, 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 gossip.
Welcome, all you dapper folks, to the Fox Den this evening. I'm your debonair host, Fox Squire. That's Mr. Fox Squire. We have, for your viewing pleasure, the amazing Dirty Lola for this evening as my company. But first, I want to allow them to introduce themselves and allow me to pay a few bills up in here. So shout out to Head Nerds in Charge for bringing me on to the greater HNIC network, making sure to like, follow, and subscribe to headnerdsincharge.com and Head Nerds in Charge on YouTube and on all the platforms. You can go to headnerdsincharge.com and pick up some merch, sign up for the Patreon. Without further ado, let's embrace the spectacle and dive in with my guest, Dirty Lola.
Hi.
Hey. I always love seeing you. Always love seeing you, ma'am.
Oh, I miss you. How are you?
I miss you too. I'm doing well. I'm working through this pandemic like a crazy person, ready to have it over. Still washing my hands, still wearing a mask everywhere. But am I tired? Oh, yeah. Like so many expletives, I don't even know. Yes, exactly. Wash your hands, wear your mask so we can all go outside again. Because we don't want to be on punch no more. I did what I was supposed to do.
I'm tired of this.
I have it in multiple colors. I have dressed it up. I have whole outfits. And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with this accessory. Can we, what's the next season? What's the next season for? So let this go. Well, I don't want to talk too much longer about that part. Let's move forward. So, Dirlo, you have such a wide range. Me and you have known each other, since I'm going to say the Delancey. Is that?
Yeah.
Yes, we've known since the Delancey.
Yes.
When you were hosting Sex Ed A Go-Go, when it first was starting out. Yep. Now you done moved up to things like HBO, going over to camps, going over to conventions. So tell me in your own words some of the background and how you got started actually in the business you're in. So start with the business and then how you got started in the business. Go right ahead.
Well, so I am a sex educator, performer, and dildo slinger, meaning I sell sex toys. That's my broad range of things that I do. And I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and I mainly teach general sex ed, polyamory, and kink to adults and some younger adults like college age. And how did I get into this? It's such a weird thing, but I started out with a Twitter account and just talking about sex. That's literally how all this began. Talking about sex. Posting titty pics, Titty Tuesday,
Titty Tuesday. I remember.
Tuesday, but it used to
go on.
It still happens, but it's not en masse like it used to. Like it used to be the thing. And I always say I came into Twitter when it was still the wild, wild west. Like when people were just wild and people were having DM sex, but on the timeline, going back and forth, and it was a whole thing. And that's where I got started, and I gained a following there and was talking about sex. That's where some of the seeds for Sex at a Go-Go got planted, the idea to do the show, how I found out about the conferences I started attending, and where I was like, I really want to be a more substantial part of this community, and figuring out how to do that, which was like, what do I want to do, and how do I want to contribute to
Yeah,
it? Because
right.
I'm not like a teacher. I didn't go to college for that. I have an inordinate amount of random sex knowledge because I read and consume any and everything I can.
Yep,
I'm
yep,
self-taught. And so it's like, how do I, and I'm always giving advice, and I was always giving advice.
yes,
And Sweet Lorraine, who you also know,
yes.
we were hanging out one night, and she said, you know, you should do this for other people, because we were just talking about stuff. And of course, I pull out my sex toy. At the time, my sex toys fit in a suitcase. And I was like, oh, have you seen this? Like, oh, this might be a thing you might like. And we're talking, and she's like, you need to do this for other people. And I'm like, nobody is going to come and watch me talk about sex, or that. But it planted the seed, and then I started going to conferences and talking to people, and I'm like, oh, this could be a thing. And then here we are. I realized the other day, like, 8 years. I mean, I haven't been doing the show since the pandemic started, because
Yeah, it's always possible.
it's such a thing. I just can't bring myself to do it online. For me, I need that energy. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's not gonna feel the same. So, but it's been 8 years since I started Sex at a Go-Go, which is bananas. But doing the show and going to conferences, and then speaking at conferences on different topics, and that
In
started
colleges.
waking up. Oh, say it again. I'm sorry.
In colleges.
And colleges, yes, like going to
Mhm.
colleges and like speaking at things, and like every year was something else, right? Like something else would get added, something new would be added, somebody would ask me to do something. It's not very linear. It's so weird, because people are like, well, what did you do? And I'm like, I just kept showing up and saying yes to things. And a lot of my career was because I helped people. Like, I did a web series for New York Magazine, and I got that because a student came into the sex shop, Shag, where I work, and they wanted to talk to the owners, because they were doing a paper about like the sex store business, and they ended up talking to me, and then we ended up chatting, and I ended up giving them all this stuff, because I love helping people with projects. I'm like, what do you need? You need resources? Have you talked to this person? Have you talked to this person? And she remembered me, and she got a job at New York Magazine, and they were doing, what did they call it? It was expert witness. And it was basically people who do jobs watching their jobs in movies. And so they wanted sex educators watching sex scenes in movies and commenting on it. So she emailed, she was like, oh, I'm at New York Magazine now. And then I did that with Francisco Ramirez, because she's like, who do you know? And I'm like, oh, he's amazing. You know Francisco.
I know Francisco.
And they loved us so much from this thing we did for New York Magazine, which wasn't paid. We did it for fun, but they were like, you were great. Do you want a show? Pitch us something. So all of that came from help, just like answering somebody's questions. And yeah, or I'm in Math Magazine, a few issues, and that came from Mackenzie coming in and like, hi, no, issue 0 hadn't even been put out yet, looking for people to sponsor, looking for places to sell it. And I'm like, let me tell you all the people. And that friendship we kindled a friendship. And so it's been like this, honestly, networking. Like, I don't do it because I want things from people. I do it because I like to help, but then people remember you, even down to HBO. Right. Like, I
remember, the HBO thing. You were on high.
I was on High Maintenance, but wait, I'm going to be on HBO again. I can't see the name of it yet. It's going to be released at some point this year, but I recently filmed some stuff where I'm more prominently featured for HBO. And but that I got because an artist, Kira Cheers, did a show called The List like 4 years ago. She came into Shag, was just looking for a raffle sponsor, and then started talking to me. She's like, I want a night where a sex educator comes in and can talk to the audience and answer questions. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I can give you like 2 tickets. I'm like, that's fine. That's perfect. I would love to see your show. And I love doing stuff like this. go. I get to, after the show, I get to sit on the bed, answer everybody's questions. It was a great night. 4 years later, she's still dropping my name, and somebody had
Yeah.
gotten in contact with her, a talent scout, and she's like, "You need to talk to Lola. Lola will do this." So
Lola will
four
let you
years,
know.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Is like if you make an impression on people and you're kind and you do things because it's interesting and fun and not because you have an end game.
Mhm.
And sometimes you need. I'm not downplaying the end game and having a hustle, but I find that like I get a lot more out of just if I love it, I can if I can do it for free. If I don't have to take money,
Right.
I can. Companies always I'm like you need to
Well,
pay.
but I think that's the other thing is that you, even when you and I have connected multiple times from doing your show and stuff like that, it's always been a genuine connection. Like I don't remember how we exactly met, but I do remember like after I got to know you, we were like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like I remember going to your house with one of my partners. I think for a
Yeah,
Christmas thing. Like
yeah,
you keep those genuine connections so genuine that people are like, "Oh yeah, that was great." Like I even remember one of my partners, I think my wife had come to one of your shows and she still had she's like, "Oh my gosh, that was so fun," because she never usually wanted to go because it was like,
right,
they can be a little sometimes seeing a bunch of performances, the same type of performance could be a little dry. It was such a
right,
different thing. And she also was really impressed at the level of knowledge and how personable, and just the whole thing. And I mean, that's one of the reasons I always loved doing your show, and I still love you in general. I still follow you on Twitter. um, but I think the other thing is like even because you did. I'm trying to think. What was the other one? What's the big one in Vegas? The big.
AVN.
Yes, you did. You
Yes.
did a booth, or did you do the show? You
No,
did
I
the
did
show
Sex at a
AVN.
Go Go at AVN,
That's
which
right.
we didn't know how we were gonna do it because
Mhm.
it's they're not there to see sex ed.
Exactly.
They're there for porn. But
Yeah.
the person who brought me in was somebody who followed me on Twitter. She was working with AVN at the time and writing and doing things and love. And she was like, I want to get you in here. And we
Mhm.
figured out a way. We figured out how
Yeah.
to make it entertaining. We figured out how to get people to come down to this. Like she's like, I got you. It was like a giant box of sex toys that she'd gone around to the booths. She's like, I
Mhm.
got you so much stuff. So we just did like a mini trivia and had people do like we were just making people do things. So it
Yep.
was a different. I was like, I don't have a go-go dancer, so you're gonna be my go-go dancer, and it was
You.
a great time. Like, and I loved it, and AVN kind of it's not. It kind of broke up. It's still there, but they're not doing the big.
Right, they've separated a bit. Well, I mean, as
Yeah,
we're talking about the conventions that you've done, AVN's a big one that people
yeah.
have heard of and stuff like that. How overall, how did you like the experience? And like, what's something that you're like, I really would love to see this added to the roster here? Because I will say for you, I have my own thoughts, but because I've been like 3 times.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts? Because I'd love to to go back and forth about that.
I what I so going my capacity and going with also part of like B2B, which they have
Mhm.
a very or had a very small like B2B section. And I enjoyed that because it was making
B2B,
connections,
business to business.
business to business, yeah. And
Yeah.
so and they would have talks too. So it was like good to go and meet people who were working in other shops and other things and learning their, perspectives and where they're coming from. So it wasn't
Right.
just the like porn side. I loved that. But it's bananas. Like going and just the melee and how much people clamor to get in things. And I wish they would have had a little bit more of a show, like an actual show style, which I think
Mhm.
people would respond to if it was done the right way. Like like an interview series with the people and have, because sometimes it's hard to it's such a swamping situation.
Yeah.
It's so many people, and there's not just not just the porn stars, not the performers and cam girls. It's also like the amount of people coming, and it's not just men. It is
No,
everybody,
no,
like
everyone.
couples, all genders. Everybody is coming to these shows to meet people, to get to see new things. Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know how do you make that kind of madness better.
Well, I mean, have you been to Exotica?
I haven't been to Exotica.
I did. So I was they of course had this giant ball thing where they'd have all the like the dancers and porn stars jump in there and like
Oh,
look for balls, and there was a game. And but they have a main stage. And
okay.
I always wonder how, how other things would deal with the main stage, because I was like, the main stage really helped to clamor people together just a little bit, but and
Yeah.
this is all pre-COVID. Let's
Right.
let me just be clear.
Right.
They would kind of clamor people there so they could all watch a show and then continue with, oh, I'm going to go over here, but there'd be like at 5 o'clock, there's going to be this grinder. Somebody's going to be on their grind and grind,
Yes.
and it kind of helped to break it up a little bit and also give you a chance to kind of connect.
Yeah.
I also feel like they did a good job of like the main stage was in one place, and then there'd be like vendors for random stuff. Like there was a weed vendor there because, of course, who was
Right.
selling not the, he wasn't selling product, but he was selling stuff to do the product with. Really
Right.
nice stuff, but it was like right near the stage. So as soon as people like finished at the stage, they turned like, oh, is that a new, is that a new thing? I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
And that was helpful as well. I think yours was the first time I've ever heard of a show that was informative. That's one of the things I'm really happy when I found out that you were going, because I don't always know how much they inform. I've been there as a correspondent. I've been there as an assist before when it comes to the AVNs for the convention portion.
Mhm.
And having somewhere where they're specifically giving out information, I was like, what? This is
Right.
amazing. Because
Right.
people have questions, but they get so wrapped up in like, I'm seeing this porn star, I'm seeing that, like I want to go see this person, which is great. But if you're already looking at all the sex stuff, why don't you look at some good information? Because I've seen
Yeah.
like I think one time I saw that they had, oh my gosh, okay, this is back in the day when they had just the bottom part of a woman.
Oh.
And,
Mhm.
it was moving, but this is when it first came out. Like this is the very first one. I remember that booth all up, tucked off in the corner, and the guy had great information. He's like, this is why this is good. Nobody was willing to listen to it because they were just trying to demo that particular item to sell
Right.
it. And I was like, that's great. But I ended up talking to the guy and I was like, wow, you have so much great, like fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see them kind of shifting into something where they're doing something educational.
Yeah.
And how
But
did
you're
you
right.
feel as a like, I'm going to say business because you were there kind of as a business,
Yeah.
doing a show specifically. How did you feel as a business? Like, do you feel like I know you had somebody there, so it's a little different
Mhm.
feel to it, but overall, do you feel like they highlighted you well? Did you feel good? Like, oh, people are coming, or did you feel like, whoa, there's a lot? I mean, I know it's a lot going on, but did you have any feelings about the actual interaction with your people there?
Yeah.
Who were watching the show, and
I
with AVNs as a whole?
I feel well, okay. My person was I think the thing that made me feel taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of her, that there wasn't like, it's because their website is a mess. Like when they talk about things
Yes.
and if you try to find out who's going to be there or what the events are,
Yep.
they have parties and different things that the public can come to.
Yeah.
And even trying to figure that out as somebody who's working it and attending and all that, I was so confused.
No, I was a sponsor for I was doing an event planning for a private party, and it was such a whole thing trying to just get people to understand that. I was like, yeah, it's a private, I can't let you into this.
Right.
It was a whole thing. So I get it. Like they just, the organization, like they organize it as if it's a bunch of porn stars coming to a shoot instead of organizing it as an event where they have both fans,
Mm-hmm.
full on patrons, as well as professionals. Because it's hard to connect. I think for the business to business side, like you were saying, I just felt like when I was trying to interview some of the porn stars, trying to track them down, no one knew where they were. There were whole sets of people who like they would have like the one little booth of kind of the newbies. But then if you were looking for like a Evan Stone, I was like, I had an interview with him scheduled, and I actually found him as I was walking. I was like, Evan. And I was like, yeah, I'm Fox. He's like, oh, yeah, we have the interview. I was like, yeah, we can do it right now. Are you free? He's like, yep, I'll make time. But that was from lots of crazy emails, lots of like it was just like, what, where?
They don't make it easy. And like I noticed it was a mix of things because I like a main stage I think would be amazing because
Yes,
all you have to do for the main stage is you combine that dude with the machine that everybody was interested in and wanted to play with. You combine that dude with a porn star who gets to demo it and he talks about it with them, and then people are interested, and then you say you can find me at if you want to look at blah blah blah. But
right.
you're making people come over to like talk to you. The Sex Expo
Oh yes,
that
I'm just thinking about that. I'm
yes,
just thinking
that
about
was very similar to what you were just saying. Like they do the main
that.
stage, they do
Hmm.
the information because they have classes that are like separate off to the side that you can like attend. But then they also have the main stage where you're learning about a product or you're learning about a company. They're doing things to create engagement, so they're having little
Right.
contests. They're like announcing things. Like we did the fashion show that
Yes.
we had, and it was like you come through, so it creates like a moment where people have to stop and like give a
Pay
little bit of
attention.
focus, and people will. If all you have to do is lure people in like a contest, we're
Hmm.
doing raffle call every time the main stage happens, so come up if you want, and you got to watch this thing, but then we're going to pull tickets. Like there's ways to get people in. I think AVN was is respectfully a money grab. I mean, people
Yeah.
will pay a lot of money to be able to be there. And I don't think those people are necessarily so upset about the unorganized nature of
No,
it
because
as
they're feeding a specific type of patron, but the thing
right.
is, they're starting to see because AVN does this every year. They have the same week as CES. Like,
Yes.
come on now, like
Yeah.
yes, I know what you're doing because I've done double duty where I had to go do interviews at AVN and then go over and do interviews at CES, and I was like, didn't I see you yesterday over at Tammy's booth? You were buying. And they're like, no, you didn't see me.
You didn't see
Wasn't me.
me.
No, I'm like,
No.
because those are the same shoes. I commented on them yesterday. But yes, I did blow up somebody's spot, and they're like, no, I'm good. No, you didn't see me. But I feel like the organization that goes into CES, like
Hmm.
the sheer amount of organization, I'm like, y'all, if you could just take a little sprinkle, a little bit of
Yeah,
sprinkle. And
a little bit.
I will always say that any convention needs a basic green room, a place for the businesses. Even if you can't, like if you are a business vendor, to have one spot where you can go get water.
Right.
I'm not even talking about nothing, but I'm talking about go get a water.
A couch just to sit for a little bit because there's nowhere to sit.
Those floors hard. I just
Yeah.
feel like a lot of, and I'm also coming from the nerd convention side where that's a basic.
Yeah.
I would never, I've never even heard of a place that doesn't have a basic green room unless it's a very small 1-day con. If you
Right.
have a 2 or 3-day con, most of the time there's some sort of basic green room where you can go get yourself a little refresh moment. And even when
Right.
I was in Exotica, they had a whole green room in the back. You could freshen yourself up. You could leave your stuff back there. It just made it
Right.
very clean and feel like, oh, you care. Even though they didn't do anything, they did have like a couple ladies in there to watch the stuff. There
Right.
was really like they were at the door and everything, but there was no bounce or anything. But you still felt like, oh, you cared enough to give me space.
Right. Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference to any convention. Now,
It
aside
does.
from AVNs, you've also gone to, I know, sex camp and other sex conventions. When
Hmm.
it comes to the camp side, because AVN's probably the biggest that I can think of.
Right.
When it comes to the camp side, so tell me about one of your sex camps, and then like what got you started in attending? Because I know that you've gone a couple of times.
Yeah. So Sex Geek Summer Camp
Hmm.
was it's a business getaway. That's how you have to look because you're there, you're taking courses. So it's like take the conference, like a business conference where you're going to learn information, learn skills and things. Take that out of a hotel, put it in the woods, and then add in like summer camp vibes to it. And that's Sex Geek Summer Camp. And I started attending because in the beginning of, my career, I was like, I want a little more guidance around business. Because when I got started, nobody was offering
Hmm.
like any kind of certificate programs.
Hmm.
No, I'm lying. One place was there in San Francisco.
Oh,
It's like every other weekend for 3 months, and so basically you either have to fly back and forth or live there. And
whoa.
it's not even really a sex educator certificate course. It's because they run a hotline, and so they're training people to do the hotline. But it's such a comprehensive education program. People do it because it's a full blown like sex educator course. That was just out of reach. Like I was like, I can't do that. And there wasn't really anything else like now, which now I teach for a certificate program, but now there's so many things and choices out there. You can do things. So this was a place for me to go and kind of wrap my head around, like, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? Like, what have I not done? I think at this point, did I have a website? Yeah, I had like a okay website, maybe not my very first Sex Ed Go website. I had a Twitter account, a Twitter following. Like I had a lot of stuff. So going to camp was kind of like, what do I need to know? What am I missing? And to get community, to meet more people, which I did. I met so many people. And my first year at camp was how I made like my connection with the folks at Self Serve in Albuquerque. They were doing Pornotopia. I talked about my show, and they were like, "We do this porn festival called Pornotopia. We want to bring you out. We want to pay you. Also, we're helping the University of Mexico do their sex week. So we'd love to have you to be a part of Sex Week." So they brought me out. I did Sex at a Go-Go at Sex Week. I did a show there for Sex Week. I did a show at Pornotopia in an old theater with my name on the marquee. And I taught a class at Pornotopia. And that was my first like visit to New Mexico ever, my first time in Albuquerque. But all of that came from like going to camp, meeting people, making connections, learning things. And camp also helped me realize I knew what I was doing. Like I was like, oh, it affirmed. Like I'm like, oh, I already have a website. I have this. I already do this. Like I'm really far ahead where I thought I was like behind. I'm like not as far behind. And so I picked up a lot of stuff, but I kept going back. I went back 3 years, and my main thing was the connections and meeting people, because it's other sex educators at different points of their career. And not just sex educators. We have like sex therapists, people who run any kind of sex related business. It's where I met Zoe Lingen from Spectrum Boutique. I now work for the Spectrum Journal. I'm the creative director there now. So like that friendship all started at camp. And you get close to people because it's really camp. My first year I was in a tent, a little tent, not even a big tent, like a little tent. My mattress deflated, like it was like camp. But and you're wearing shorts and stuff. There's bonfire at night, roasting marshmallows. We're eating in like a summer camp mess hall, like outside. Like it's camp. It's
with adults and a lot of sex.
It's all adults. And then there's like, while it is business, it's which I appreciate Reed, because he's Reed Mahalko, it's his camp. I appreciate his approach to it is like, you're adults. You're gonna want to have sex. We're sex educators. Part of the work we do. Also people are attractive and you want to meet, go there. So the camp we were at had a separate dome that they called like the pleasure dome, because it was 2 geodesic domes. So there was the teaching dome that was really close to like the main house and the main part of the campground. And then the pleasure dome was like further down in the woods. And at night you could hear people walking. You would hear them like, oh, like the moans carrying over the sound of the bubbling stream. And it was great. But it was like set up that way where you could go meet people, hang out, hook up, but also you're learning about business stuff. And some people didn't do the hookup stuff and some people did, or people just made like, there was a sacred goddess circle one night that was just like only for women identified folk. And they were just like, hey, we would like to like book some time where it's that we take this and we just do this. And it was great. And every year I went back, I upgraded. My second year, I did a bigger tent. And it was like a much bigger tent with a bigger bed. It was like a house. It was like great. And then my last year, I was a counselor. I was like a camp counselor, and I stayed in a bunk in a cabin. So, yeah, it was amazing. It's amazing.
Now, I know you were saying there were a lot of businesses and people who are different places in their sex kind of like sex industry career as far as like starting out with the sex education, do you have any like, oh, this is a camp that like people who are interested in either not so much starting an education, but going to a sex camp? Because I know when it comes to like a business camp, they really do kind of focus in and be like, no, we really want you to have some sort of business. But there are sex camps where it's like, this is just a camp. And if you had a recommendation, do you have any that you think of? And what's the biggest pro if you're looking for a sex camp and the biggest con? So I know there's a lot of questions. What's a good sex camp for just a regular person?
Okay.
And a pro and a con to be aware of as you're looking for these types of camps or conventions even.
If you want a camp specifically, the Dark Odyssey folks, they do a camp that's very kink focused. They also do other things, and there's one that's like a summer takeover. They do like a winter hotel takeover. They have different names, but that one's the most well known, and that one is very accessible to folks. So that's great. The drawback for anything with camping, if you don't camp, if you're not a person who has ever camped, you have to like set yourself up first. So like, and that's the only like kind of, I'm gonna say con is it's not, even if you get a cabin, there's still so much stuff you have to bring. So you have to be ready for that, right? Like it's not dropping into a hotel. There's a lot of hotel conferences. I'm trying to think of like what's still around, because sadly
I know I was just thinking of that. I was like, what can be?
Who's still, because I know my last hotel conference, was it Winterfire? It was in Ohio.
Yeah, I heard of Winterfire.
Yeah, they were amazing. They were, and I loved it. And I'm sad because I know they they closed their clubhouse and they sold off a bunch of stuff. And I think hopefully they come back after this and they can regroup, because they were amazing. It was whole hotel takeover, open to the of course you have to pay, but they took care of people. Like they had a snack bar out the whole time, and that was the first time. I've gone to many conferences, business and personal, and like most of the time there's like, sometimes there might be a little breakfast something with like water, coffee, maybe a little muffin action occasionally, but you don't, and if they got a sponsor, sometimes there's like a snacky moment, but not usual. They had an entire table with all kinds of like snacks, granola bars, protein bars, water. Like if you were coming there kind of on a tight budget and you needed something, there was always food. At midnight, they put out a buffet. Kinky folk and swingers like to do buffets. This is the welcome back.
Which always, I mean, for all the swingers that I know and all the kinky folks, I'm always like, why do you guys consistently want food around during this moment?
Not just food, a buffet.
It's true. It's like everything that you're like, is that cheese dip with hot fudge? Okay, y'all. No. I just led myself into this.
Right.
Energy.
Like, what's going on? But at midnight they put out food. And like there was coffee all weekend, and they, as for a facilitator, somebody coming there and teaching, I told them what my rates were. They didn't blink. They paid for my flight. They paid for my hotel, which y'all, it's rare. It's rare for them to eat. If they pay for your room and like you to get there and to stay, they're not paying you. And if they're paying you, they're not paying for you to get there.
Yep.
So it's to find a group that's like, we'll pay whatever your rate is for each of your classes, not just from like, I taught 2 classes. They paid my rate for both my classes. They had me picked up at the airport. Like, they took care of me. I got paid, like walking into my first class, they handed me my checks. I was like, I didn't have to chase anybody down. They checked in with me because it was my first time there. Yeah. But it was also just the care of them. Like, how are you having a good time? How are you? Like, let us know if you need anything. Cause it was my very first time doing anything for them.
Oh, so they spoiled you.
They did, and just their systems in place. Like they did a bunch of bands, like so different colors meant different things to help people mingle, and you could tell they were a family, and it had that kind of feel where even though they were a family, they were very welcoming to new people who were there and coming in. I hope they bring it back because that was just a wonderful experience that I would want to go to even just as an attendee to go back and do it. Yeah. I like. Oh, you know what's good? Southwest Love Fest is in Arizona, and that's a polyamory conference. And that one it's more public facing. Like a lot of conferences tend to be, even though they're sex ed, it tends to be professionals that go. You don't get as many like lay people coming in and going to things. Southwest Love Fest is a lot of poly folk, ethical non-monogamy, E&M folk coming in who want to like learn or have a weekend because they also do they did a hotel takeover, or they're maybe the first one they did, but I think this last one they have coming up is a hotel takeover. So that's amazing. It's if you're interested in getting into or exploring ethical, I hate saying getting into, but exploring ethical non-monogamy and its facets, it's a great place to go because there's classes for people who are deep in it and need some help or picking up new stuff. There's classes for people who are first dipping their toe into it.
Yeah.
And then there's also entertainment and events, and there's like a hot tub and a swimming pool, and there's a market where they sell like all kinds of fun stuff like sex toys but also goods and things, local goods from crafters around Arizona. And you get community, which is the biggest part of all of these things, is going to meet other people who are in your bubble.
Yes.
And I tell people that, especially if you're living in a small town, you're somewhere where there's not a kink scene, there's not a poly scene, there's not just like no real alternative scene. Sometimes you do have to travel to find your family.
Yeah.
And when you go to these things, they're great because it becomes an annual thing you do. It becomes a place you go to meet people and you look forward to it and you're going to see the same people. And then you can like have people to talk to all year long because the internet is magic, which we've all learned over that there are ways
the pandemic taught us.
Yeah. But I met so many people these last like 9 years of doing this. The amount of people that I've met and loved, like fell in love with as friends and partners that I met along the way. Like I met at conferences and camp, and my partner who will celebrate 5 years this August, I met at camp.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, but I think that's also a testament to the genuineness of you. Sex camp friends are the best friends. That is a testament to you. Like when it comes to connecting with people, that connection that's genuine, it can blossom into other things and it can be explored. I know even for me and my partners, one of my partners, we've been together for 10 years, and I met him when he was making out with my boyfriend at the time. That's how we met. So, I mean, sharing the love, not with that boyfriend, but still with him. Who knew? So it's one of those, I think, very important lessons as we're talking about going to camps or going to conventions where it is sexually oriented. Yes, snacks are always good, but really making sure that they're giving you information that is valid, that makes sense, and that they are making sure that you're okay. I think when it comes to any convention, from my nerd convention side, that's one of the big things. I'm like, what do you do if there's a problem? How is it handled? How was it handled? I'm always, I'm all for if you took a tumble as far as you had an incident happen in your particular convention or whatever it is, but how did you handle it? How did you go forward with it?
Did you hide it? Did you deal with it?
Right. Like what was were you trying to like give us this whole Bill Clinton moment because I don't know, you did not, right? Or did you actually say this happened? We're going to be transparent. Here's everything we did. Here's more information. And this is now our policy.
Right.
I think that's a huge difference in any place. And then I guess kind of to wrap us up, what are you working on now? Like, I know you said the HBO thing you can't talk too much about, so we'll move on from there.
I mean,
But what other
I
things?
I mentioned some stuff. So yeah, so the HBO thing that wrapped already, and now they're just waiting for a release date. And then I can start talking about it once we have a release date. There's a thing in the pipeline for Netflix as well that
Awesome.
wrapped, that we shot in 2020. They've been editing. They have the things. I got reached out to by the producer recently, who's like, I didn't forget about you. Like, we there's been so many things happening, but they're starting to pull together the campaign side of it, because
Right, right.
it's like a whole thing. And they're doing, so the thing for Netflix is an informative 3-episode miniseries, sex ed information. And I'm so excited for it because 125 countries. It's going to be dubbed in multiple languages, and I
Hey.
do the thing I do, which is talk about sex. And not to toot my horn, but everything you've been saying about like how I connect with people was exactly what she was telling me. And I'm like, you don't know how much I needed to hear that from somebody who
Too.
does this work, because not doing the show, and even though all my jobs are still sex related, like working in the shop, working for Spectrum, I've been doing stuff for B Vibe, and other brands. Sex Ed a Go Go was my baby, and so like I've been feeling kind of like the new year irrelevant, like what am I doing? And so to have this project come back around and like find out it didn't get dumped, which I was worried about, and for her to say like, oh, like I've been, it's like I feel like I've been hanging out with you for a year because we've been editing and I see you every day. And you're like so warm in the way you connect, and I'm like, I'm so glad that comes across, because that's what I want. So I'm excited for when those things hit. Spectrum, working for the Spectrum Journal has been magical. I really love working for a company and a person who really gives a fuck about intersectionality, like in a real way, like not in a like work to make sure our team is diverse. When we did an artist call, she wanted us to do an artist call. She's like, we have a lot of artists. A lot of them tend to be white. I really want us to get some more artists who are not just white. And like, I feel like the people we get reached out to are white. So we did an artist call, and I'm like, BIPOC folk to the front. And so we were able to like fill our, our list with like all these amazing BIPOC folk, LGBTQ folks. I was like, give me all the marginalized artists, give me your art. Let's have you do this, because for every article we put out, we also produce a piece of artwork to go along with it. And it's either done in-house or we have it sourced out, and everybody gets paid. We pay the person who writes, we pay the artist, I get paid. And that being able to pay people, a gift. I love being able to reach out to people to write for us and say like, hey, and we can, this is how much we pay. And but it's just been great, because to talk about so many topics people write about that are great. Like we've had being queer and Muslim, we've had raising sex positive children, we have an article coming out soon. The title is Not Your BBC, and I'm so excited for other people to read it. And like, so they're not shying away from talking about the stuff we need to be talking about. And to be working for somebody who has a platform, has gone viral, and is like actually using her money and face and everything to like put these messages out, has just been amazing. So that's where a lot of my time is right now, working on those things. And I'm trying to, what else is happening? I feel I have a class. Oh, I'm teaching online for Shebop in March. So if you check out my IG, because that's where I'll be posting about stuff.
Go ahead. I mean, you're right here. Go and spit that IG.
Yeah, I don't have a date yet for it, but I'll be teaching.
I'm sure people will want to share and follow.
Yeah. So my Instagram is Dirty Lola, also my Twitter. The class is called Is There a Secret Handshake Navigating Alternative Lifestyles? And it's basically just a class for people who are like, I would like to do the kinky thing or the poly thing or the something thing, and I don't know where to go. I don't know what door to knock on. Like, I don't know. Where do I find other people? So it's that's the class. Yeah. But on my IG, if I'm ever working on anything or have a class coming up or something like that, it pops up there.
Now, before I let you completely go,
Mhm.
I was just thinking of this as you were talking about diversity. I was like, how much diversity did you start with when you first started versus now when it comes to the LGBT spectrum as well as BIPOC folks? Because I remember the beginnings, and I would love for you to tell what you were seeing being right there in the front line of
Yeah.
like educator and stuff like that.
It was very white and straight. Very white, straight, a lot of men or a lot of like white women who
Mhm.
are look a certain way. And not that they're bad, like some of them are amazing folks and educators, but it was like the same thing. And you come into it, and I know like light skin privilege, and I say it out loud. I say it out loud when people bring me into things. I'm like, I know why you chose me, because I seem palatable, but I'm about to curse y'all out on the stage. And next year, I'm going to need you to replace me with somebody else that doesn't look like me or you. And I've seen people really listen
Mhm.
to not just me, but other people who have been, when you get a platform, you take that mic and you're like, hey, thank you for having me, but also this is whack. Where are all the black people? Why don't you have, you know
Right.
that there's so many educators? And like I belong to WACSHN, which is Women of Color Sexual Health Network,
Mhm.
and I'm part of another, BIPOC sex educator group. And there's so many people, so many BIPOC LGBTQ disabled folks doing this work. And if you didn't look hard enough, you wouldn't know that. And so
Mhm.
it's getting better. One of the things that I have, my little side project that I want to turn into a bigger thing. My quest is to have it be an actual website, but on Twitter, you can start groups. So I started the Lola Decks because I'm old and I remember Rolodexes.
Hey.
And it's basically, I've gone through and added marginalized folks who do sex related, sex education, sexuality, sex toy, anybody in that kind of business. And when I say marginalized, I mean disabled folks, LGBTQ folks, BIPOC folks. I put them on there, and I direct people when people go, hey, I'm writing an article. I'm like, look at the Rolodex. You will find people
Mhm.
who fit these identities who you can talk to. Because that's what, again, I love a resource. I like helping people. I like aiming people where they need to go. So that was what that was. And my hope is to turn it into a website where I can give a free way for people to promote themselves,
Yep.
including burlesque folk, because y'all are a resource and it's and needed. And so I want to give people a way to have like a little profile and ways to reach out to them, and
Yep.
then I'll make money off of the people who want to access it.
Yep.
Like, have it free for the people who I want to have on the list, but like you could pay a monthly membership to be able to access it and
Yep.
have a way to look through. And you know my dream is to have it broken up, so like if you search somebody, a specialty or a thing, you'll get like the people that pop up. If you type in a state, everybody that's in that state will pop up for you, and populate, and you can look. That's my hope, because my legacy is, I want my legacy to be more people knowing all the people I know. Like that's,
Yes.
yeah, because that's why I started Sex at a Go-Go.
No,
Like part
I
of
get it.
it was to, I got tired of saying people's names and nobody knowing who those people were.
Right.
And I was like, you don't know. This was before Erica Hart was Erica Hart.
Right.
So
Oh,
I was like,
I
you don't
remember
know Erica
her.
Hart?
Yes.
Like, you haven't. What you mean you haven't met Erica Hart, or you don't know Erica Hart? And what you mean you don't know Kevin Patterson? And what you mean you
Right.
don't know Ducky Doolittle? And what do you what?
You've never seen Erica Hart's chest? What
Right?
is
Like,
wrong with
come
you?
on. And,
She's looking at
and
all
when
of you.
we first had Erica on, like that, I was, Erica has always been amazing, but
Yep.
that was before the Afro Punk blow up and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always been my goal is, yes, know me. I'm a Leo. I want you to know me. Yes. But also, I want you to walk away knowing all these new people and
Mm-hmm.
having new folks to follow who do amazing things and can
Mm-hmm.
bring so much to your life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, the Fox Den came from the same kind of ideal of like, there is a lot out there when it comes to conventions. There's other ways to look at it. Like one of the main reasons I was like, oh, I really want Dirty Lola was because I was like, there are sex conventions. beyond AVN. You do not necessarily need to go to AVN to have that kind of experience and connect or get more education. That is not the end all. It's
Right.
fine if that's what you want to make it for you, but let me introduce you to somebody who's part of this world and who is also, you know, like a POC and who is a part of the spectrum and all and of what's going on here.
Yes.
And yeah, I remember I've talked to folks and I'll be like, oh, well, that's Dirty Lola. They're like, who's Dirty Lola? I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. Let me get off the Twitter.
Like, wait a minute.
I really need to educate you. Oh, Jesus. What are you doing not knowing who Dirty Lola is from New York? What?
But that's the thing. Oh, and I just shout out to Sex Down South in Atlanta. Marla is doing amazing. That's another one that's open to the public. That's a lot of learning, but it's public facing. I feel like the classes are more public accessible.
Yeah.
Some of these like conferences are very like, if you do this work, you'll or you're in college, these classes will be good for you. But Sex Down South is very public facing, and they have the whole, you know, sex fun side is like at night there's a dungeon. I mean, they have like a yoga room, a massage person sometimes on staff working, like where you can go and rest and get a little rub. They have like a market, again, like the dungeon at night, and they do a show. They do the Little Bang and the Big Bang. If you know Jet Setting Jasmine and King Noir, they have been the MCs the last couple years for that show, and it showcases like amazing folks. I mean, besides Jet Setting Jasmine and King Noir just being fantastic couple, amazing people, it's very sexy. It puts you in that mode, which we need. And I need 2023 to be.
I'm right. I need so much more. Yes. So I don't want to take up your whole night, and I feel like we're talking about kind of everything. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us that you were like, oh, I want to just plug this one more time for this? Actually, while you're thinking of that, I'm going to do my plug. Okay. I want to shout out to Head Nerds in Charge for once again bringing me on the greater HNIC network. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe to the Head Nerds in Charge on YouTube and on all platforms. You can go to headnerdsincharge.com and you can pick up some merch, or, you know, you can go ahead and send it for our Patreon up in here, you know, and that's Head Nerds in Charge. And now, Dirty Lola, do you have any other things that you want to like plug? Any other parts you're like, oh, I could use some extra on this?
So if you're in New York, you can come visit me at Shag, which is the sex shop in Williamsburg. We're on North 6th and Roebling Street. I've been there for 8 years. It's a cute little boutique sex shop. You can visit me there. Go to the Spectrum Journal, spectrumjournal.com. Get your read on. It's also an online sex shop, which I promote multiple revenue streams for other people because I want everybody to get money. And then for me, if you want to support me, I have a wonderful little new website I'm so happy about, dirtylola.co. Where you can learn about how to work with me. I do solo consultations with folks. My new little project is Your Best Sex Friend, which is the friend you can have conversations about. Maybe you don't have a friend you can talk to those things about. And you can just have a one-on-one about whatever, relationship stuff, kink, polyamory. You'll walk away with, you know, resources and places to find things. So, yeah.
And say your website one more time.
dirtylola.co.
That's right. You heard it here. dirtylola.co. All right. Well, that is our show. I just want to give another fantastic shout out to Dirty Lola for being here with us in the Fox Den. It's always a pleasure. I love talking to you. I love that light and spirit that you have every single time. And again, I'm going to say big ups to Head Nerd in Charge again for bringing me onto the HNIC network. Like, share, subscribe, follow headnerdsincharge.com. And I have been your host, Fox Squire. If you're trying to follow me, you can go to any platform and go to @FoxSquire2016, and I'll be right there. You might see some pictures of food. You might see some pictures of the next guest. Who knows? It's a free for all, but you're going to see something. I can tell you that. All right. Well, this has been amazing. And I just want to tell everyone out in the audience, all my dapper folks who are tuning in, Embrace the spectacle. And thanks for joining me at the Fox Den. Bye.
Bye.
Crossfire. It's caught in the crossfire. Caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the crossfire.